How do you start your podcast in 2021 if you are a beginner? What kind of equipment would you need? And can you make money from your podcast? These are some of the key questions that we will be answering in today's interview with Reggie Koh. Hi, this is Eric here, and you're listening to
Highly Sought After.
His very first podcast, The Financial Coconut, first went live in October 2019 on his kitchen table. A year later, The Financial Coconut became one of the top podcasts in Singapore and currently the number one financial literacy podcast in Singapore, averaging 25 to 30,000 downloads a month. Fast forward today, Reggie now runs an edutainment podcast production house, creating podcasts for various financial, educational, and entrepreneurial communities. So if you plan to start your own podcast this year and you want to shorten your learning curve and increase your chance of success in launching your podcast, this is the interview to listen to. Okay, Reggie.
I'm very amazed with teleprompter.
He's just impressed with the bio, right?
Come on, this teleprompter very good.
Thank you.
Because I've recorded tons of B-rolls, right?
Yes.
So
Actually, that's my secret of how to do it one take.
B-rolls are so tiring, like
God.
Oh my God. So,
Reggie, I just want to say today I feel like I'm super excited. In fact, I'm super chill about today's interview because most of the interviews we have to prepare our guest. But listen up, guys. This guy has 6 podcasts, 150 episodes. I've only done 15 episodes, right? He's the master here, okay? He's the Yoda of the podcast world in Singapore.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's waving his hand right now.
Yeah, please vote for me. Thanks.
Okay, I have a question for you. October 2019, that's just less than 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, my God.
How do you feel about that very first podcast? What was your feeling like back then when you did that very first interview?
I'm pretty sure like everyone else, right? You would think doing a podcast is very simple. I was like, okay, just doing, right? Just record and let's just go, right?
Yes.
So easy. And I actually toyed with the idea starting July 2019. Right? So I have this weird fancy that every time birthday, I will try to do something new, right? So I did weird little things with me and I started to do it. But actually, so I recorded 10 over episodes and I killed them all, right?
Why?
Because I was like, this sounds so bad. Why do all these podcasters make it sound so easy?
Yes.
And yeah, that's so I recorded and I lamented for another 1 month or so. And then I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Okay.
But then, after a while, I was like, you got nothing to do here, right? Because I was staying in KL at that point in time. So I had nothing to do. And I was like, okay, if you got nothing to do, then let's do this again. So finally we pick it up again and recorded. It just went out in October. Right. So that's kind of where it is. But by the time it was out, I already had 10 episodes in the bag.
Got it, because you have already kind of practiced.
Yes.
Do you also launch that 10 episodes as well?
No. So I that's a quick tip for everybody, right? Like if you want to launch a podcast, you better record about 10 episodes in our library so that you're not in a rush.
So by the time that you officially launch, you're actually in your 11th episode, but to us, it's actually just the first episode.
Yes.
That's brilliant. Okay, that's brilliant. Now, The Financial Coconut. I sense that there's an interesting story. I wanted to bring a coconut to the studio, but we could not find big enough coconuts, right?
It's okay. Wait for us to have merch, right?
Merch,
okay, merch.
Good job.
Someday, yes.
Okay, so tell us why the name Financial Coconut.
Everybody asks me this question.
Yeah.
The simplest idea is I think finance is a little bit too complicated for a lot of people, or at least the financial community make it sound very complicated. Like it or not, okay? They want to make it sound fancy and complicated and very cheap, right? So I was like, let's go for something cute, something more fun. And it was actually a poll that I did on my socials between the wealthy banana and the financial coconut.
Oh
so
my God, what's with the fruit?
So I was like, guys, I just want something fun, Asian-y, and I was like, yeah, so the financial coconut, right? So that's kind of how it is. Yeah.
Got it. Now, for those of you who can't see us, but we have a very bright yellow background. You know, you would have been cool if you're called wealthy banana, right? Then the yellow kind of fit, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I thought about coconut? I thought that you chose coconut because in at least in the Asian context, right? When you say a person, hey, you're very coconut, you know, it means that the person is stupid. So therefore, I thought that you said financial coconut because it's for all of us who are noobs out there who don't know much about finances, and you make it easy for us. That was not the reason.
And that's the beauty of the name, right? Because
Damn.
everybody that asked me about the name
Yeah.
has some sort of interpretation in their own head. I was like, oh, okay, so that's how you look at the name. Oh, that's how you look at the name. So everybody just has a different interpretation.
The next podcast, I'm going to call my headless chicken. And I'm going to let people tell me why they think I call it headless chicken.
I know.
And I might find a good narrative.
You know, we did the series for entrepreneur, right?
Entrepreneur shit.
Entrepreneur shit show,
Yeah.
okay? And we accidentally left the iron at the back. You know, and everybody thought, wow, that was like very interesting. What does it symbolize, right? Does it mean like you should iron through your life and all that shit? So actually, it was the very first recording of the day, and we were already rolling. All of us forgot to take away the iron, and it just got stuck there, you know, throughout. And ever since then, it became a thing within the company to try to keep quirky things within the set. You know?
love it.
So then people talk about it, and it's just all part of it.
So guys, tips, all right? Don't come up with obvious names, right? Let your audience make meaning out of your narratives. Now, why the topic on personal finance? I mean, you could start a podcast on any topic, but why this topic? And also because you're new to this, right? I mean, 2 years ago, you know, you're new to podcasts. Why were you so confident of talking about personal finance?
No, I wasn't confident at all. Like, to be honest, I was just very irritated with fake gurus. Okay.
So you're irritated with fake gurus,
Yes,
and
yes.
that gives you a kind of like a mission.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, you know, you guys are just kind of going out there and flouting nonsense and stirring unnecessary fear, you know, for people and all that jazz. So I was like, you know, I have some thoughts. Let me just record and put it out there. So by the time when I put out content, Singapore already had quite a community going for personal finance. So that's a leverage for me. I don't need to do the hard work to rally the community.
Correct.
There's already a community. I was just doing content for them, right? So I started just dumping the content on the different socials, Facebook groups and what have you, and it blew up, right? So I've never worked very hard for following. We've never really done a lot of strategic work until recently. We got a little bit more structured.
Yep.
You know, so like how to cut the content, do this, social worthy share, blah, 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 all those things.
Correct.
It's only very recent. For the longest time running, it has always been me just putting out my thoughts, my perspectives. And yeah, people bite it.
So let's come to perspective in a short while, but I'm curious, like why a podcast? Why not YouTube? Why not LinkedIn?
You cannot tell me? Why not YouTube? It's like
I'm
3
on
cameras, 3 lights, you know, 2 microphones, a whole set. This whole thing.
Kind of answers the question.
It answers
is
the
it?
whole thing, right?
Yeah.
I did this whole podcast on my dining table with one microphone. That I don't even know why I had this one microphone in my apartment in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Right. So, so I was like, oh, there's a microphone here. You know, let's just record. So I didn't even spend a single cent additional to buy any recording equipment and whatnot.
Logistics
It was
and all.
just very simple. That thing attached to my iPhone, and then I just recorded.
Beautiful. So it's just simple, no flair,
Yeah, no flair.
and you can get content out just like that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it helps that, you know, a lot of the streaming platforms are making consumption easy. Right, so I think all those, I'm just riding off what other people have already done.
Very cool.
Right,
And for those of you listening, you know, we will definitely go into the technical aspects of, you know, the streaming and the equipments. But I guess a lot of us are going to be very comforted that all we need is just a handphone, which all of us have, and a microphone.
Yeah.
Right? Simple. Now, personality. Does it take a certain type of personality to have a podcast? Like, do you need to be quirky?
Yeah.
Do you need to be interesting, eloquent, extrovert?
So a few things, right? I don't think you need to be extrovert. I don't think you need to be super quirky, but it does help. If you have a personality, you have the ability to attract your audience. I think that's important. But I would say that if you're doing videos, post what can save you. Okay, so
Wait, post work, what do you mean?
I mean, like all your animations, your jump cuts, your B-rolls,
All the distractions.
all the weird little things.
Yeah.
You watch every single major YouTube channel. They have all those things like
Yeah.
boom, 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 right? Whatever that they do.
Sound effects.
Cuts, booms, what have you. They all can save the video. You can actually take an extremely raw video cut and make it very interesting.
Yeah.
Even though at raw interface, you'll be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
But when you're doing a podcast, you don't have all that. So you don't have the support of animation or post work. You have to be able to be a good storyteller. So it does help that you don't have R-E or
fillers.
Yeah, none of those fillers. And you have a general ability to share stories, right? So I think that helps.
Got it. Okay, so storytelling. And what about sound? Like, do we need to sound good to be on a podcast? Or it really doesn't matter?
For 20 over years, nobody has ever told me that I got good voice.
Really? No one said that?
No one ever said that.
But I feel that...
Right, people only tell me you need to 减肥, right? You need to lose weight. You need
But because I hear you, Reggie, on your podcast, and you have a very colorful intonation. I can almost see your expression through your sound. Would that mean, is this something that is trained, or you're just like that? You're super animated with the way you sound?
That's the part, right? When people meet me in real life, they expect me to be as animated, but I'm actually just drinking tea and, being very boomer and just kind of sharing with them my thoughts, perspective. So I'm not that animated. So when I actually roll and record, it takes up a lot of energy. Right? So it's a very flow activity. There's no distraction. You cannot have any other thing. I'm just recording here, right? So I actually set certain days to record, and during recording days, I don't reply emails. You don't ask me to do anything. You don't disrupt my flow. Right? So that's kind of how I do it.
In that zone,
Yeah, in
right?
that zone.
Got it. What about now? Are you in a zone, or this is the natural Reggie that people get to see in public?
Yeah, I think so. And you're holding the space, so I don't need to be in the zone. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of being a host, right? You hold the space for the audience and also for your guests. And then your guests just talk, right? So I don't need to be concerned about production.
I love that. And the guest can just be himself or herself.
Yeah.
Okay, now, so let's zoom into your background, right? What do you think was your backstory or things that happened to you that gave you that original perspective about finance? Because I look back at myself, I'm also not very happy with the fake gurus out there. I also think that money is important, but I would never want to talk about finance. It's just not part of my backstory or my DNA. Why is it yours?
It was definitely part of my backstory. So
tell us, please.
I was caught up in quite a financial scam for years, right? So I would say that I'm an accidental scam artist in that sense. It wasn't in me to consciously try to cheat other people and all that jazz, but I was already caught in the whole cult, right? So when you're in the whole cult, it was honestly very hard to break out of, right? You can watch a Vox explainer about cults, or you can go and read out about cults, but generally a lot of these financial scams, they do form this cult-like mentality. So I was already stuck in it for a long time, and when I managed to break out, I actually went through a few years of pretty depressing times. So you can say that I'm on a journey to to spread the word of what are these people doing and all that jazz. So it could be definitely a big part of that.
So you're kind of from the dark side, and you decided that you got out, right?
I wouldn't say I'm from I wouldn't say I'm from the dark side in the sense that I did all this and then I'm coming out to tell you, this is what a shit is going on. It's more like that I was one of the pawns within the system.
Gosh,
and then it was so this is how this whole shit is real.
How do you got that awareness all of a sudden? How do you wake up and go shit, I'm in some kind of a scam?
I joined a tea house, right? So there was this lady that was, she had her own tea house, and it was this amazing, beautiful tea house. I was like, oh, it's a nice place. You need help? So she was like, yeah, I need help. Don't mind me. So she was like, oh yeah, I need help. And I was like, okay, then let me help you. Right. So I just spent a lot of time at the tea house. So because I spent a lot more time at the tea house, maybe 5 days a week, I had a separation from the environment. So that was extremely important, because when you're in the cult, they will ask you to meet up very often. Everything is about the group, the community, blah, blah, blah. And it's honestly very hard to feel like you're in a cult when you're in a cult.
Yep.
Right. So it's helpful that because of that small little tea house experience, which made me love tea even more. But because of that, yeah, I managed to break out because I had a different environment for a long, long time, and made me question every single thing that they were telling me.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
And is there a place that we can listen to the entire full story of how you got out and how you realized all the things? Is that part of one of the episodes of TFC, the Financial Coconut?
I think if you listen to the earlier episodes, like the first 10 to 20
The legacy
episodes.
episodes.
Yes, the legacy episodes. Yeah, we actually call them the legacy
I love it.
episodes.
I love the name,
so, yeah.
by the way.
So if you listen to those episodes, you will be able to hear some of those things. All right. Not in like full, force, or there's no one episode telling you everything, but it's sprinkled across that early 10, 20 episodes. Yeah.
Got it. So I understand now that you were once in it and now you got out of it and you want to make sure that none of us get into it.
Yeah, I would say so. I won't say I want to make sure that nobody gets into it, but I just want to put out my spin and my perspective,
Fantastic. I get it now.
And yeah, that's just kind of how it is.
It's so true, right? They say that a lot of times it's our struggles that kind of define our narrative and our story.
Yeah,
And you've been through that. That's why you're able to share it. Now, so I have a question for you. It's been 2 years since you launched TFC, the Financial Coconut, and you are one of the top in the topic of financial literacy, right? Which is pretty impressive. 25K to 30K. It's actually you are actually in the top 5 to 3%. So, what do you think were some of the contributing factors? I know you allude to it, but maybe right now you can share with us. Looking back, what contributed to your success in this podcast?
So definitely trying to speak to your audience. I think that's important. So you probably know your audience probably have heard this before. That is to speak to one audience or define your audience, right? So at that point in time, I wasn't very cognizant that I was defining my audience, but all my references were PMETs. Right, because it's people my age, right? So like all my friends were concerned about the same thing. So all the references were them, the jokes were for them, the examples were for them. Because when you're trying to explain personal finance stuff, inevitably you need to set up some personas and you got to set up some examples, right? So if everything was for them, it just made it a lot easier for these people to come in. So having that audience, I think that helps.
Okay, cool.
Having a good voice helps, I guess.
See, told you, right? The voice.
Yes.
And
my
what
voice not working with me today.
but it's okay. Today you're on a break. You're just having chat with me, right? How do you define a good voice?
Someone that can share stories, like I said, right? I think that's important. If the person has a decent personality in their voice, I think that's pretty good.
Wait, decent personality in the voice. What do you mean by
decent? I'm not saying like moral values.
Yeah.
I'm not coming from the moral level. I'm saying like this person can actually articulate, and through the conversation that they're putting out, you can kind of feel that experience, right? So I would say learn to use your voice to a fuller motion. Right, so you have that down experience all the way to that big.
So your intonation,
yes,
your emphasis, or putting. One thing I learned from a voice coach before is that we need to feel before we speak.
Yeah.
A lot of times we're very detached from the emotions, right? So it's disconnected. Got it. So I got it. Very clear about your audience. Have a clear voice, good sounding voice. What else? What else were some of the other contributing factors for TFCs?
I actually don't really know what made us big, but okay, I think the community that kind of helped, right? So having the community around community, right? Around a community, right?
Oh God,
it's like wow.
Today Reggie's definitely on an off day.
Yeah, it's a very wow. Today is not a great day with the voice.
No, it's fine. We
but
like
anyway,
it this way.
Podcast is highly post. Okay, just want to put it out there that you don't try to just do one take and believe that with this one take raw it can be done, right?
Yeah.
So everything is highly post produced. Okay, so
and actually one of the reasons why. Okay, we'll reserve that conversation later. Let's talk about why both of us love podcasts. Because I've done I've done different formats, but I love podcasts a lot. We'll talk about that in a short while. But you talk about community. What do you mean? That means there were enough people out there who already kind of step out and say they want to learn more about finance. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's part of it. But also, I was extremely engaging with the community. I actually meet up with them, right? So when I had like people DMing me, I remember one of the earlier followers, they DM me on LinkedIn. I was like, how the hell do you know who I am? Because I don't, my first 10, 20 episodes, you don't know my name. I don't have email, there's nothing, right? So apparently they went to Google search the Financial Coconut, and I forgot that I updated my LinkedIn profile to say that I'm a host on this podcast, and they managed to find me. So long story short, it was pretty cute meeting up with some of them, and I made personal connections with them, trying to find out what they want, answer their questions. So it's the same idea with building any product. You start with the MVP, and then with that you try to refine the product to your target audience, right? So I just asked the community, what do you want? And then if you keep answering their questions, they tend to love it and they will share with their friends, and I realized that a lot of them, it becomes an office topic, like some of them actually have a few friends in the same office, and they all listen to the podcast and they discuss about the podcast. Hey, this week, this thing, what are your thoughts, right? And it's quite wild. So we have the kind of community aspect things, making it palatable and answering people's questions. I think those are just some of the core fundamentals of building a show that people love.
Fantastic. Now, if you were to go back 2 years from ago, right, would you change anything about TFC?
Would I change anything? No, I'm actually trying very hard to keep TFC intact, in the sense of we're having all these new formats, all these new show structure, all these new people on the team, which are taking on different aspects of production and different aspects of the content, that sometimes I'm like, this is not something that I will say, or this is not something that I will put out. But because the team is getting so much bigger, we're really operating on guidelines, right? So this is the guideline, this is the target audience, is what's happening, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of people are putting content on behalf of the brand, and some I don't even agree with all of them, right?
Wow,
so that's one part of it. Don't agree doesn't mean I disagree.
Yeah.
Just means I'm like nonchalant about it. So I'm 这个需要讲, man, right? Like, it's like, it's just like,
do you
need to say that, right? This is just what it is. So I'm actually trying very hard to keep the OG content where it's just me alone doing my monologues, talking to the people, and just having a great time and being dynamic on it. But monologues are hard to produce. Okay, it's very hard to be a solo person filling up content for 15-20 minutes.
Yeah, so true. I mean, that's why I have it easier interviewing you, right? So what do you think, if I can sum up the essence of the Financial Coconut, right? What would you say it is?
At this point in time, we are a financial media company, essentially, right? So we're focused on PMATs, but we're not blocking out other people, okay?
Of course, yeah.
So you want to listen, come in, right? Feel free, come in, right? Just be very aware that millennials are our main target audience, and we're just trying to help people maneuver through this whole big giant of personal finance, right?
I love it. Now we're gonna go into the tutorial aspect of today's interview. Now that we got the backstory of TFC and yourself, right? So a lot of people listening to us are actually PMATs as well, and they're entrepreneurs, personalities, content creators. The number one question they're probably asking right now is, why do we need to create a podcast? What would you have to say to them?
You don't.
Ooh, job done.
Oh yeah, you're done, right? Yeah, that's it. Okay, guys. Okay, take care. Have a good day. So I don't think everybody is suited for podcasts, and I don't think everybody should produce a podcast. But I would say that it is in the early days. So much like any other things in the early days, at least in this region, it's already huge in the US, right? So much like any other things in the early days, you may be able to become a dominant player in the space, right? So that is a part that you can capitalize, like TikTok, right? I have so many friends that just went on TikTok for like half a year, and then they were like, wow, they're like big celebs now. I was like, what the hell? How do you get like 500,000 people looking at you dancing, right? Yeah. But there's some sort of caliber, it's like, okay, let me just put it to you this way. You want to be a model, right? You got to meet social beauty standards. Yep. You want to be a blogger, you got to meet like, societally accepted writing standards. So there are some social aspects to this thing in terms of criteria and level, right? So if you want to be a podcaster, then you have to abide by some of these things, like good voice, able to talk, personality, and all that stuff, which we talked before, right? But that being said, you don't need to do a podcast at, that's kind of where I stand.
So maybe we put it another way, like, what do you think is the podcast value proposition?
Okay, so I think the podcast value proposition, shout out to my advertisers, okay, they're on the fence, okay, they always ask me this thing, okay, it's like, why should I spend money on the podcast ads or sponsor your podcast? I think podcasts, a lot of podcasters say this, but I do think it's a very personal experience, because you put your earphones in your ears. You can watch video on the go and you don't really care about it, right?
Correct.
But when you listen to someone for 30 minutes, an hour every week, some of the listeners, they listen to all our content, that will add up to 4 hours a week. It's very hard not to feel that, I can trust these people, or these people make some sense, or they fall in love with the voice, they fall in love with the stories. And sometimes when I meet them, they're like, oh my God, I know you. I was like, I don't know you, right? Tell me about you, right?
Yeah.
So, because they get very excited. I'm just saying, shout out to the fans. I love that you're listening and you're very excited to meet me. But when you meet me, please let me know who you are. Because I a bit
And that's precisely the beauty of podcasts, right?
Yes,
People kind of assume that they already have a relationship with you because they listen to you every week.
Yes. So we're kind of like dating, right? Through the audio medium. So that's the beauty. And I do think that in an environment where short form content is thriving, podcast is one of the last few mediums where people can listen to you for an hour and they just hang around.
100%. In fact, that's the reason why I love podcasts. I feel that podcast is the only platform today that people are willing to spend 30 minutes with you. Even, so for example, Instagram and Facebook, you have less than 1 minute. TikTok, 20 seconds. What else? YouTube, 3 to 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes if you have a good hook. But the podcast, on average, people listen to about 20 to 30 minutes of you, right? I mean, that's a lot of attention that you can get and an opportunity to build trust. So I think that's one of the reasons. Second reason why I like podcasts is because you don't have to dress up.
Look at how
you look at Reggie. He's covering himself up with his cushion right
I was
now.
like, wow, this set, crazy.
So nice,
I've never been in such a beautiful set.
Because we're doing it for YouTube as well.
I know.
But I would say that podcasts, because we're only using our sound and we don't really have to look the part. So I think there's lower barrier of entry, I feel.
Yes.
We just switch on the microphone, we can talk.
Yeah,
in our pajamas.
from a equipment standpoint, it's gonna be a lot easier for sure. Yes, it's lower barrier to entry, but from a presentation standpoint, I do think it's a little bit higher. It's a little bit harder than video. Okay, not in a sense. I mean, I've worked with videos. Looking at cameras, you got to look at cameras, stare at it, and still speak and all that. It's not easy. Teleprompter saved the day. Okay.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, so I get it. It's not easy, but like I said, you can do a lot of post work to save videos, but it's very hard to do post work to save audios, right? So in that sense, I would say hardware-wise, it's cheap, easier to enter. But from a technical standpoint, to be a good presenter, to be a good podcaster, the learning curve is pretty serious.
A little bit steeper. So now that leads to a very nice question. Let's say, half of them still decided, you know what, Reggie, we're still on board. We're still on a podcast board, right? How do they get started as a beginner? What would you give? What are the steps that you would give them to kind of get started?
Okay, I think I've talked to a lot of podcasters or a lot of early podcasters. They DM me, right? I reply them. And a lot of people want to do very broad topics. Oh, I want to comment about society. I want to talk about anything under the sun. I was like, who cares? Who cares about you, right? For lack of a better way to put it, okay, the only people that can talk about anything under the sun are your influencers or your artists. They already have a following. People care about them, right? So people care about them. They care about everything about them. Like what do they eat? What do they think? What do they think about politics? How do they go date? How do they have sex? Right? It's like Nathan Hartono can do this whole sex podcast. Everybody listens in. I was like, if I do it, right, I don't know who will care.
Oh, you'll be surprised. You never know.
If you guys want, drop me in my DM. But the idea is, if you want to be a podcaster, I recommend you to be very, very narrow and specific with your topic. Right. So even if you want to do like an entrepreneurial related podcast, which is quite prevalent already, right? Maybe you want to focus on, let's say, restaurants only, and there are some use cases in Canada where there are a few restaurant-focused podcasts where they only interview the restaurateur, they talk to the suppliers and all that. So they only do that. And they got so big that the parliament actually talked to them to try to find out what is going on within that community. Right, so I think in Singapore, for all you content creators or all you aspiring podcasters, you should try to go, very narrow. So even in entrepreneurship, you should further narrow down, And I think that's the part where you can corner off a whole market, and everybody in the space are people that already is interested in this particular topic. They're just waiting for someone to talk about it, right? So don't try to go too broad. Everybody will tell me like, oh, but the market is so small, So yeah, I get that, and that's the monetization part, which we will come in later.
Yes.
So the market is small, but if you are dominant in the market, you always command some sort of influence. You can do a lot of things. You can upsell certain stuff. You can organize things and all that jazz, which I'm sure you and your audience.
So rather than being a small fish in a big sea, you are asking us to be a big fish in a small pond.
Yes.
So we need to pick that niche, right? Topic.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Now then we go to the next part, the content format. Yours is monologue. Mine's interviews. What are the other formats that I may not know about?
Generally in podcasts, it's monologues, interviews, which are called dialogues, and narratives. So narratives are the hardest to produce. A narrative podcast is like building an audio documentary or audio drama series.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so if you think about this interview, it's only one interview, and then we post it and it becomes one piece of content.
That's right.
Right? In a narrative podcast or like an audio documentary, on average, you take about 3 or 4 interviews as raw content, and then there's voiceover and monologues element. That the whole thing then gets stringed together.
Oh my God. It's a bit like when you go to a museum. The last museum I went was the World War II Museum, where they interview the survivors of the Japanese occupation. And there are sound effects of the war, the gunshots. There is each narrative and then the host.
Yes.
But it's just that I can't see them, but I can hear them.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, something like that. So I think the famous guys is Gimlet, right? So Gimlet is a big company in podcasting in the US, and they're famous for doing narratives, right? So
what kind of stories do they do?
All sorts of stuff. I think they started with documenting their startup journey, with the founder actually documenting the whole process, like from ideating and the discussion with the wife. No, should I use this name? All the way to like talking to investors and recording that whole process.
And they reenact the whole thing.
They didn't reenact. They record the whole thing and then they post with narratives and all that to put it together into a series. And it was amazing. Startup podcast, right? So for all of you that are new to podcasts, they're trying to listen to some stuff. Startup podcast.
Got it.
By Gimlet. Yes.
Okay, so that would be a good example of what you call about narratives, right?
Yes, and in Singapore, I want to shout out, to Saga, Aware Saga. So Aware is an organization for women, right?
Women.
Yeah, so Aware Saga's podcast is personally my vote as the best narrative podcast in Singapore.
Beautiful.
Okay, 12
so
episodes. Go and listen to the Saga. I think it's quite cool.
So we're gonna listen to that. Now, what about monologue? Like what? Of course, we'll listen to yours.
Thank
you. If we were to go for monologue, so let's put it this way. Monologue versus dialogue, right? The one that you guys are listening to is a dialogue. Monologue is just Reggie talking. Which it's easier to start? Or who would do better in which format?
From a production standpoint, monologues are way easier for sure. Right? Because it's just you can do it anytime, you can wake up, you can record, you can cut in between, whatever you. You want to hunt for guests when you are nobody, it's going to be quite hard. Okay, the truth is I started with monologues. I ran out of things to say, that's why I do dialogues.
Okay, so we can always evolve, right?
Yes.
Oh,
so I was like, nothing to say already, right? Like, what is there to say about personal finance? Enough. Okay, but at that point in time, I maxed out my understanding of it.
Yep.
Right, so then I started interviewing people. But as I started interviewing people, I realized that, there are actually other things that I could learn. So then I went to consume more content and, learn all these other things.
It becomes like a loop.
Yeah, so it becomes a loop, right? So that's kind of how it started. I would say from a production, monologues are easier because it's you alone. But if you really want to talk about the lowest, easiest way to do it right, dialogues probably is easier because you don't need to carry the whole thing.
Content,
yes, and you don't need to carry the whole podcast.
Yeah, 50% maybe.
Yeah. Actually, when I do interviews, my workload maybe is 20%, or like 30% at best. I
let them fill up
I let them do the talking. I'm not too hard up on trying to make it too tight. Because to me, firstly, everything can be post. And I think when you're talking about like letting people talk, sometimes giving people space does prompt them to talk more. And if you get someone on, you already want to hear from them, then why you talk so much?
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of
actually
how
dialogue might be also. So here's how I structure it. So if you are someone that has a lot to say about a certain topic, you can start with monologue.
If you're an expert, yes, monologues are
subject
great
matter
for
expert,
you.
right?
Yes.
Or you just have original thoughts, right? Possible.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you're someone that, like me, you're naturally curious and you're like a sponge, you love learning, and you actually have a network of people that you have access to that you want to learn from, dialogues are fantastic.
Yes.
Wednesdays are my favorite days. Like I can sit back, relax, and just pick your brain,
Yeah.
and learn from you.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of answers the question of content format.
Yes. I think a lot of my friends, they do benefit from the whole dialogues because it helps them to connect with a lot of people. Actually, when doing dialogues, right, we made a lot of friends doing dialogues, right? And I don't make friends doing monologues. It's just me.
Because you're
It's
yourself
just
and-
you yourself, right? And then
Yeah.
there's a whole art around doing monologues, but that's a little more complicated, right? But dialogues helped me make a lot of friends. Definitely empowered the company to where we are today, because all our sponsors were guests before on the podcast, right? So
yes.
they love it, they enjoy the experience. I was like, oh my God, I want to support you guys. I want to sponsor your podcast and all that. So it's an important process of making friends. Okay, dialogue helps.
There you go.
Yes,
So if you guys are deciding whether dialogue or monologue, you kind of got the answer
Yeah,
from
yeah.
today. Okay.
Don't do narratives, just saying. It's too complicated, too much.
Not for now, but you can go enjoy it
Not for now,
first.
yes.
Okay, then let's go to the equipment, okay? When you first started, it was just a handphone and a earpiece, right?
Yeah.
Or
So
a microphone.
yeah, I have a small Rode attachment, like a Rode mic. I don't know. That's why I was like, why do I have this Rode mic sitting around in my house? But it's those mobile input kind of thing, right?
Okay.
So
Do you still have a picture of it?
I don't, but it's not difficult to find online, right? It's just Rode handphone input mic, kind of something like that.
Wait,
It's
how do
very
you spell
small.
that? R-O-U-D-E?
R-O-D-E.
R-O-D.
Yeah,
Okay,
so it's
got
a famous audio brand, right? Yes, it's that one.
Oh my God. Okay,
Yes,
so we
yes,
have
yes.
this on camera. You can show it on
Yeah,
camera.
yeah. It's
there you
this.
go.
Okay, of course now this one a bit more atas because
More
for,
atas, ah.
for iPhone,
Yeah.
Back then I a bit old school, use the audio jack.
Okay, got it.
But yes, but this is exactly
Okay, so that's the Rode mic, right?
Yeah, Rode
okay,
mic.
now,
Yeah.
so for all of us who probably are going to just start, would you also recommend that? Just a handphone and a Rode mic. It's good enough.
I would say maybe nowadays not good now.
Okay, so what would be the basic podcast startup kit?
Not sponsored,
Not
not
sponsored.
sponsored. Very irritated, not sponsored. But anyway,
Yeah,
okay.
actually, oh,
yeah,
man,
we should
we should have done
totally.
our
Yeah,
homework.
we're talking to a sponsor anyway. So, a lot of people have big fancy for like Shure or like Rode. Some of these bigger names. I think Audio Technica is good enough, right? So AT2100. Or 2005. I think these two models are cheap and good. $100 for the mic. Comes with a very lousy tripod, but good enough for you to start. You know, and it's a USB mic input. So you just pull the mic straight into your computer, and then you download Audacity free software and you start recording. Right. So that is for monologues. For dialogues, this is a bit one part, right? So dialogues, we
troublesome.
need a recorder, right? So the recorder, we are using Zoom H6, so same as you guys, right? So the Zoom H6 will set you back about $800, $600 to $800, and then two mics. So
And
that's
we're using Shure.
Sure, good, right? But
Is
anyway,
that, okay, we're not. Sure should really sponsor this this interview.
yeah.
Actually, we should. Okay,
We should,
anyway.
man. Shout
Yeah.
out to whoever.
Yeah. But okay. It's gonna scare people if we tell them that they have to invest $800. Is there a cheaper alternative to a dialogue?
I think these days what a lot of people do is online recording. Okay.
Yeah, just do a Zoom.
Yes, just do a Zoom. So you only need $100, and then whoever on the other side, they could.
It's up to them
It's
to-
up to
yeah,
them.
yeah. Please
But
get a
you,
good
you,
mic,
you try
yeah.
to make sure they have a good mic. But I think these days more and more people have a decent setup Whether
Because of
it's-
work from home.
Because of work from home, right? So thank you, work from home. Everybody has a decent setup.
Yeah.
Some of them got like fake bookshelves, right? Like look very sweet.
Yeah.
Right? so
Exactly.
it's all part of it. But yeah, I think that's a great place to
I
start.
love that. So Zoom or any of the online software where you do your conferencing would
Yeah, but
actually
I would
work.
say it's definitely very different. Okay, from physically we're in a space, we're vibing and
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah.
It's so different from recording online.
100%.
Okay, so it took me like maybe half a year to come to terms with like, okay, yeah, we should record online because some of our content maybe not so vibey, it's more like technical.
Got
right?
it.
So that got me more comfort with recording online.
Yeah.
But for all of you that are thinking of starting, just note that it's different. It's not that simple.
Same thing, like 90% of our interviews today are still done offline. I mean, we do have a lot of guests that we would love to interview from overseas. In fact, we just did one with Chris Doe.
Yeah.
But is different. This
it's
is a
different.
human
It's different.
connection, right?
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about this.
So now we got the equipments out of the way. The next question is software, right? Which software would you recommend for them to use, or which platform to host?
I think when you're in your early days, just use the free stuff. Audacity is good enough. I mean, if you really want to go all fancy and complex, then Premiere Pro and all those things, they're all like After Effects, all those big post softwares. They
edit the sound.
Yeah, edit the sound, Premiere Pro, and what have you, right? So but I think when you first start, right, just use Audacity. Cheap. It's free. Okay, it's free. Just use it.
Do you need a jingle? Like I see all podcasts have this you're listening to, and Reggie also has one with some nice background music.
By the way, the jingles from bensound.com. Shout out to bensound.com. Free sounds, right?
Free sounds. Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of free sounds out there, right? So freesounds.com, bensound.com, whatever sound.com. There are a lot of free
We'll put
stuff.
it in the show notes, yeah.
Just go there and you get free sounds, right?
Okay.
So you want to try to go for the more obscure one so that you're not like
hey, I hear this somewhere else.
How can I hear this? Because when I first used the sound, my first few jingles, I think we're still using the jingle. After a while, during the pandemic, Channel 8 used the same jingle.
Oh my god. That's not a bad thing.
It's not exactly a bad thing, but then my listeners were like, hey, why they use the same sound as you? I was like, yeah, because we use free sounds.
and Channel 8 probably have
Channel
a budget.
8 also use free sounds. But anyway, yeah. So that's a part, right? Free software. If you're using Mac, what is that? GarageBand?
Yes.
Right? If you're using Windows Audacity, go for freesound.com, bensound.com. Host-wise, there are a few hosts.
Yes.
Okay, so hosting is a bit more complicated. We use Podbean. Okay, not sponsored. Very irritated. We name drop, but nobody's sponsored. Okay, but anyways, we use Podbean because we have dynamic ads. Okay, so it's an advertising ecosystem that we use so that we can slot ads in and out of the podcast, and we don't need to edit the podcast. So it's a time stamping. Right?
Got it.
So that is but it's our business to do that. So it's different for a lot of people. That,
if we're not monetizing for the start, we don't have to.
You don't need to, right? So
okay.
I think the only free platform as of now is Anchor.
Anchor.
Most people are using Anchor.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm using Buzzsprout.
Buzzsprout. It's also free, right? I
It's
think
free. If I'm not wrong, it's free.
I think Buzzsprout is also free.
and I like Buzzsprout because you have a lot of data that you can mine. Like you will know who are the people listening to you. You're number one on which channel and all that. All that's great.
Yeah. I actually think the ranking system is a little bit wonky. Just
Tell us
saying,
more.
right?
What
I was
do you
like,
mean?
why the ranking system? They kind of make everything sound a lot better than it is, because I have some friends who just start their own podcast and all that, which is great, good stuff, but they show me their rankings, like, huh? You're like that, can like that.
And
actually, very bad. I'm going to lose friends after this interview
it's okay
with you.
if you keep doing interviews with a lot of friends, Now, that leads nicely to my follow-up question, which is, what's the metrics of success when you're doing a podcast at the beginning when we are doing one?
So I think people look at download numbers, right? So that's the simplest one. But I do want to look at listen through numbers, right? So download numbers are essentially how many people like press click and play, right? So that's kind of how it is. But I do think that in the audio medium, it's not just about downloads, it's about how long people listen through with you. Right, so our listen through rates are amazing. 75% for monologues. Right, so everybody that steps in, about 7 of them will listen to the end. Right, for my dialogues, about 50% of them will listen to the end. Right, so our listen through rates are
How
very,
do you
very
check
high.
that? Is it because Beanpot has
No, because
analytics?
Spotify actually has analytics.
So we just need to go to Spotify and we will be able to
yes,
see.
go to this place called Spotify for podcasters, and they have all the analytics there for you. So they have the most sophisticated analytics.
What about,
at this
but
point
because
in time.
we're hosting on, like, you see, so when the good thing about hosting on Buzzsprout is that it allows you to then host on every other platform, which I think is the same for the rest of the hosting platform.
Yes.
But does that mean that if, let's say, I want to know my analytics, I go to Spotify, but I also have to go to Apple to check, or it doesn't matter? Spotify is good enough.
You can do educated guess, right? If Spotify is where most of the audience come in, about 70% of our audience come in through Spotify.
Same.
Yeah. So,
which is ironic.
Really?
Yeah, I always thought that, podcast, Apple, right?
No, but if you think about it, Apple is a closed ecosystem. So there's only 20-30% of people using Apple.
I think I know why. Because when I first started listening podcasts, I was on the Apple podcast. I was listening to that. So I stick to that platform.
Yeah.
But so you're saying that calculated guess, whatever that we see on Spotify, we can extrapolate.
Yeah lah. I mean, the Apple users not special, right?
I don't know.
I don't know, right? Apple users don't defend yourself, okay? But I'm expecting everybody that consume podcasts, whichever platform you're
behaviors.
consuming, behavior is probably going to be similar. So just use Spotify's analytics to extrapolate, right? So what we do is we look at Spotify analytics and we go back to our host platform, which is Podbean or Buzzsprout or whatever you, and we just see the kind of percentages of listens coming through from where.
Beautiful.
Right, so that's good enough. Yeah,
Okay.
then we'll have a good educated guest to present to our sponsors and all that.
and at the start, right, what would be a good number to reach out to? Like, let's say in our first year of doing a podcast, what would be a good download number to look towards?
I mean, I'm sure you know the average is about 140 something.
Yeah, exactly. I got a data. It's, by the way, it's 141 downloads every month. That's an average. Yeah. So, are you saying that anything more than 141 downloads every month?
You should give yourself a pat on the back, okay?
Okay,
right?
one pat on the back if you have 141,
Wow, yes.
142.
Yeah, okay, so for my first take is you gotta be very thick-skinned and ask all your friends to follow you.
Okay, check. Assuming we have a lot of friends.
So assuming you have a lot of friends, and no friends, never mind. Also, just say you're doing podcast.
Yeah.
People will follow you. Okay, it's not that difficult. At least in a social setting, they will have no choice but to follow you. Not very awkward, right?
Yeah.
So somehow they'll follow you. So I think follower counts matter because they do get prompt. In the discovery process, right? So I would say YouTube discovery process is the most optimal. Apple, Spotify, all of them are still working out their own discovery process. Podcast discovery is not great, right? There's a lot of recommendation. You got to be on the charts. If not, nobody really knows about you and all that stuff. So when you have people that follow you, it helps them to be reminded, of you.
Got it. The certainty of the download will be a lot higher.
Yes, will be a lot higher. But download numbers, you average it is about there, right? If you can be somewhere, every episode you can have 100, 200 people downloading.
Then you already hit your average.
And it's quite good already.
Yeah, because you do 4 episodes. You do one every week. Times 4, right?
Yeah. And that also means you have 100 to 200 people listening to you every week.
Yeah.
So that's quite wild, especially when you're not doing like comedy content. A lot of YouTubers or TikTokers, it's more fun, more 搞笑, right? Like more comedy, humor, right? I think a lot of people that are contemplating doing podcasts, they want to do the depth content, the thinking content, the kind of the thought leadership content. And hey, to have 100, 200 people or even 500 people listening to you every month,
I think that's something.
It's quite a thing, man. You got a following.
Great, thank you. Now, so that's a good number that we can go for, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of brings us to the last part of today's interview, which is the monetization. Like, Reggie, you have worked with a lot of sponsors. So tell us from a sponsor's point of view, right? What numbers should we give them so that they'll be even open to consider sponsoring our podcast?
I just want to tell my sponsors, you cannot compare me with an Instagram page.
Okay, don't look at our social media pages.
Yeah.
Right?
Stop comparing me with other Instagram page or other blog posts, because that is the medium that they are familiar with, right? So there's a track record of sponsoring blog posts or sponsoring like Instagram shoutouts and what have you. So there is in that sense, sponsors are used to that number, and they commoditize everything these days to CPM. Right, cost per impression, based on whatever acquisition cost that they have. I'm assuming the listeners understand this.
Yeah.
Okay, so when they talk to us, they'll be like, your CPM so expensive, because we're charging quite a premium on per pop, right? So I get the part, but I also want to let them know that our listeners are maybe more high value in a sense that they trust us a lot more than just a swipe.
So okay, but so what you're talking about is for your Instagram, right? But I'm saying that what about sponsoring directly your episode?
Exactly that part, right?
Yeah.
Because what I'm saying is a lot of sponsors, they compare the medium, they commoditize it to be like video, to be
to Instagram swipe.
Instagram swipe. They compare. They always come and tell me, hey, this other Instagram page. Okay, I'm not shouting any Instagram page. I'm just saying.
Yeah, they didn't pay you to say that.
There are only a few Instagram pages. Okay, so nothing personal with the Instagram pages. But they always compare me with the Instagram page. So, this Instagram page, right? I do a campaign with them. They give me this.
Yeah.
So like, okay, I totally get it. The CPM is very high, very low. Conversion is very high, very successful. Great. But in your marketing mix, right, that's only a part of it.
Correct.
Right? So when you come to us, we are developing a new medium for sure. And we are definitely not at the numbers that it's like that, right? So inevitably, when sponsors talk to us, this is an endless negotiation that we go through.
So they have to see the value of advertising on a podcast platform rather than an Instagram platform, because you cannot compare coconuts with apples, right? In that sense. No, but going back to the question again, like how many downloads must we have before we can actually, have thick enough skin to go to a sponsor and say, hey, would you like to sponsor us, and without being thrown out of the office?
I would say, right, at least monthly downloads, please be somewhere in the 10, 20,000 range.
Got it. So the minute you hit 10K, 20K downloads a month, you are kind of ready.
You can be in the ballpark for discussion.
Can discuss.
Yes.
And without you telling us your rates, right? Because it's confidential. What would
not
be
that confidential?
Oh, is it?
Right?
Oh, you can find it online. Oh, great.
You can find it online, right? Our pops are there.
What would be a good? What are ways we can monetize?
Okay, so I think the pure advertiser strategy is hard. Okay, in a sense of like, you gotta be really big, So if you look at us, we are like hovering 20,
30K,
30,000 a month. And in the podcast chats, we are like top 20 or something, or top 30, sometimes here and there. So everyone above us, right, just can look, okay, there are only a few of them above. And they themselves are also struggling with advertisers and all that, right? So it's not exactly an easy way to monetize through ads or sponsored content. But I do see some podcasts that are, monetizing through collaboration, whether is it hosting other people's events, organizing peripheral kind of stuff, right? So like if you're a podcast and you talk about, let's say, politics, and then you want to host a town hall on behalf of a company, and you'll be the best host in the space because you're the biggest podcaster, but you're not big in the sense of comparing to other like gossip podcasts. They're a lot bigger, right? So maybe,
but you're very niche.
Yeah, you're very niche. So maybe you can monetize through organizing events. You can monetize through providing a service. You can monetize through selling something through the ecosystem, right? So we've done a few of them. We've done collaboration with other people to be an affiliate. We've also done the whole like sponsorship structure, which I said was very hard. So I do think if you're early in your podcasting journey, try to use that leverage to push something that your community will be interested in, or something that you already use. If you already use, let's say, the Calm app, or Headspace, or whatever you like. Okay, clearly I do a lot of meditation apps. Right? Okay, so if you use some of those apps, or shout out to Safe Space also, my friend, right? So if you use any of those apps and you think your community will like it, then you can always talk to the providers, talk to the app, the companies, and say that, I can be an affiliate with you, or you can create your own product and sell. So I think that is an easier way to monetize rather than the pure content advertiser.
Got it. So it's more of the product, kind of product placement or affiliate marketing,
more affiliate,
right? We call that.
Yes.
So that's the primary level. But I like your secondary method, which is that I can reach out to a company and say, hey, I can do an interview, a piece of content solely on your company or solely on your products. That will work as well, right? Then that's creating is that called a collab?
I would say that's them paying me to do my job. So, I don't know if you can consider that a collab, but I would say that if you are a great host, you are rare. Okay, let me just put it to you. It's very hard to find very good hosts, especially sector-specific hosts. Okay, there are a lot of there are not a lot of hosts out there to begin with. So if you know a particular vertical, you're gonna be a much better host than if they get Aiken Chia to come in, or like Sylvia Lim or whoever to come in. Right? So they may be big in their space. They are like bigger influencers than you, and they're very good hosts in whatever that they do. But because you are in, let's say, the Chinese business vertical, or let's say you are in deep tech or something, you will know much more than them in the space. So if you can be a good host, then helping these companies do creative content, it's also one way to monetize.
I got it. Beautiful. Now, so, that's a lot of questions that we got down today, right? Thank you so much for giving us like a basic tutorial. We need to top up water for you soon. So, I think final question. What's coming up for you, Reggie? Like in the podcasting world?
I mean, we're always looking for new content, always looking for new hosts. So we've expanded. We have a few hosts now on recurring circuit. I I actually dropped my Thursday interview series, so I actually passed on to another host to do my Thursday interview series.
But it's still under the TFC brand.
Yeah, under the TFC brand. So we're growing all these other side podcasts. And yeah, essentially we're playing big on this podcast space. But also, I would say that at this point in time, we are a financial media company, right? So we are no longer just a podcast, right? So we have our newsletter, we have our Instagram page, we have everything like essentially the advertiser tells us what they want, right?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, okay, let's do it. And then,
Yeah.
and then we're going to find a way to do it.
Fantastic. So podcast becomes just one of the communication mediums.
Yeah. Still
to
my
help
favorite.
educate.
Still my favorite. Just saying yes.
Very cool. Now, so since it's your favorite, right? So I'd like you to do a shout out to everyone listening to us. For those of them who are still sitting on the fence and like, should I have a podcast? Should I do a podcast? What would be an advice for them that can give them that confidence to start their podcast?
So I would say a lot of people have a lot of thoughts these days, right? So I actually tried writing a book in the past. Okay, and I'm not great at it, right? Clearly, I didn't become famous author. I became a famous podcaster. Just saying, so I couldn't write very well. It wasn't my medium, but that medium was very cathartic for me as a process of learning and trying to expound my thoughts. So I can say the same thing for podcasts. If you're on the fence thinking if you want to be a podcaster or you want to do a podcast, just do it in a sense that what's the worst? The worst is you get to put out your thoughts. You get to expound your ideas and you learn a little bit more about yourself also. Yeah. Whether you become famous, that's a whole different discussion. Of course, if you join a network like ours, then it's easier for you, right? Of course, it's the same as anywhere else. But the idea here is do it for yourself. I don't think you need to really do it for others. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much, Reggie, for this amazing interview. Knowing how busy you are and
I think you're busier, right?
No, both of us. But thank you so much. I think this is going to be a signature episode for anyone who wants to learn about podcasts.
Really?
Yeah, because if you go look at at least here in Asia, we don't have much content about how to do podcasts in a podcast. We have a lot on YouTube, but we don't have a lot on how to do podcasts in a podcast episode. So I would say this is probably our first collab and it's a good one.
Okay, cool
High
stuff.
five, man.
Thank
Good
you.
stuff.
Wait,
See, we're not coordinated.
Okay.
There you go.
That's a problem.
There you go. There's a problem with
lockdown. You lose your social abilities. Right,
but anyway, Reggie, all the best to TFC and everything that you do. Keep shining and keep doing what you do, all right?
Thank you. You too, man.
Thank you. My biggest takeaway from today's interview is that there is no such thing as a good or bad social media platform. The question is whether there is a good fit to your personality. So in the case of audio podcasts, I think a very important thing to take note is you gotta have an interesting personality. You gotta have a lot that you wanna say about a particular topic. You got to be someone with a good sounding voice and you are naturally curious and you love to learn and get to know people. If that's you, then obviously, podcast will be a fantastic platform for you. And the good news is I've created a very simple starter guide kit for Podcast 101. So if you leave us a comment right now telling us what's your biggest takeaway from this video interview, you will get a copy of this starter guide, all right? So leave us a comment and we do videos like this every single week. So if you like videos like this, remember to switch on the notification, subscribe, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.